Welcome to What If Dekus Will Overcame All for One, the Power Within series. Join us as we explore the thrilling possibilities if Midoriya's determination surpassed All for One. This is part 1 of our epic journey. Get ready for an adventure of a lifetime. I live in a place where 80% of the people have powers called quirks. It's a society where powers are common, and a career was created for those who want to use their quirks for good. Quirks usually show up when you're a kid. But I never got one. When they checked me at the hospital, they said I'm completely normal and have a joint that people with quirks don't have. So basically, I'm out of luck. No superpowers to save people. I wanted to be a hero because I've always admired All Might, the #1 hero who always saves people with a dazzling smile. To me, that's the coolest thing in the world. What kid wouldn't dream of being a hero with such an example? When I found out I couldn't have a quirk, I got really depressed. I couldn't achieve my dream no matter what I did. But I didn't give up. I studied as hard as I could to get into UA, the best hero school in the world. If I get in there, it means I can be a hero, right? Today, I come back from another day at school, just like any other day, facing bullying and insults from my classmates. Why? Just because I don't have a quirk. My old best friend, Katsuki Bakugo, became arrogant and abusive towards me because he has a strong quirk. He calls me Deku, like saying I'm useless. Over time, I learned to bear the insults, all thanks to one person who believes in me becoming a hero. My mom. At first, it was hard for her to accept that I wouldn't give up on my goal of becoming a hero. But over time, she got used to the idea and started supporting me in every way she could. She's my only living relative because my dad died on a business trip 10 years ago. I'm 14 now, and as I mentioned before, I'm arriving home from school. I reach the front door and enter as usual. "Mom, I'm home," I announce loudly as I take off my shoes at the entrance. Then I walk further into the living room and realize my mom isn't home yet. I notice her shoes aren't at the entrance either, so she hasn't returned from her shopping yet. I don't think much of it and change into more comfortable clothes. After about 10 minutes, I'm in the living room wearing looser clothes, like shorts and a sleeveless shirt, both in different shades of black. I'm about to sit on the couch to watch TV when suddenly, ding dong. It's the doorbell. It must be my mom returning from her shopping, but I wonder why she didn't use her key. I walk towards the entrance and peek through the peephole. On the other side, I see a police officer with a slightly sad expression. I wonder what the officer wants, and slowly, I open the door. "Good afternoon, are you Izuku Midoriya?" The officer asks with a look that initially worries me. "Why yes, that's me. What's going on?" I ask, intrigued. Police officers have never come to my house before because my neighborhood is very quiet. He clears his throat. "I'm sorry to have to tell you this, young man. But your mother, Inko Midoriya," he paused for a few seconds. "She died during an attack by villains 6 hours ago," the officer said with sadness and a look of sympathy as he put a hand on my right shoulder. My eyes widen. What?" I ask with a forced smile, taking a step back. "You must be kidding me, right? Surely Kachan told you to scare me like this." "It's not funny," I respond to the officer with a faint smile. "Surely, it's a bad joke Kachan came up with to give me a heart attack or something." What a fool I was for taking the policeman's words seriously for a moment. However, the officer's gaze hardened with pity. "I know it's hard to accept, kid, but it's the truth. In the commercial district, a villain with metal powers attacked, causing a large sign to fall on a crowd of innocent people. Your mother was one of them," the officer explained as he took off his cap to offer his condolences, as if what he said were true. "It's really not funny. Stop the damn joke already, Kachan," I exclaimed loudly, hoping the idiot Kachan would come out of hiding to yell at me and tell me how pathetic I looked. The joke is too heavy. Surely he paid the officer handsomely to collaborate with him. It's very wrong to tell such lies. But the man's expression didn't change. "Please, kid, calm down and understand that this is not a joke. Your mother, Inko Midoriya, has died, and that's the reality. I'm truly sorry, but you need to accept it to move forward. I'll come back tomorrow to inform you about her life insurance and the funeral. Be strong, kid," the officer said firmly, trying to comfort me. He's really a damn liar. It's impossible for something like that to happen to my mom, completely impossible. Just imagining the scene he described. I can't. I watched the officer get into his patrol car and leave. I stayed in place without saying a word, just waiting with a smile for someone, anyone, to tell me it was the worst damn joke ever played on me. Then an idea strikes me, and I slam the door shut to return to my living room. I quickly reach my sofa and grab my phone hastily, dialing my mom's number. Please, 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 I whisper nervously, hoping it's all just a stupid nightmare from which I'll wake up any moment. Beep, beep, beep. I hear my phone dialing, but still, no one answers, and it goes to voicemail. Hello, is this Izuku? This is Inko Midoriya's voicemail. I'm busy right now, so leave a message after the tone. I listen with fear and nerves to my mother's voicemail. I still remember when she asked me for help recording it because she doesn't know how to handle technology. I don't give up and dial again. The result is the same. So without stopping, I dial again. The result is the same. Tears start streaming down my cheeks, while I still have a faint smile, hoping my mother will answer and tell me everything is okay. Then I dial again. No answer. Slowly, my hands start trembling. Then I dial again. No one answers. I'm scared, really scared. I'll repeat it as many times as necessary. It's impossible for my mom to have died crushed like a cockroach by a big sign. The damn image just doesn't fit in my head. The only person I had left was none other than my blessed mother, who kissed me goodbye with a kind smile this morning. I start shaking heavily, tears falling uncontrollably as I stare at my phone. Then, with all my faith, I dial my mom's number again. Beep, beep, beep. There's no damn answer. Crash. I throw my phone forcefully against a wall, and it breaks immediately. It's true, isn't it? My mother. Mom is dead, and I won't see her smile again. Wah! I cry uncontrollably on my sofa, clenching my fists tightly with anger and rage. What fault did she have to be a victim of a damn villain? He damn well probably, even if he's arrested, will still live and breathe, a right he doesn't have for doing that to my mother. That bastard killed my mother. No. I scream with force and rage as I stand up from the sofa to kick it several times, filled with hatred, simulating that it was the damn bastard who murdered my innocent and great mother. I kept assaulting the furniture until I had no more energy to do it. Devastated, I continued crying out of anger, thinking about how to find and make the bastard pay. The officer didn't say they arrested him, but even if I wanted to kill him, I don't have the power to do it. However, I don't care at all. I can't let this go. I can't let this go. You're an interesting kid, said a deep voice that seemed to come from the shed window next to the living room. I jumped in panic and noticed a man outside wearing a formal black suit and a black mask shaped like a skull with tubes of the same color on its sides, resembling Darth Vader in a way. I couldn't utter a word due to confusion and the fact that my throat hurt from crying and screaming. The intimidating man calmly opened the window and entered the room. He then approached me. With fear, I hugged my legs and covered my face, hoping he wouldn't hurt me, but he simply knelt in front of me. I know everything that happened to you, Izuku. When he said my name, a shiver ran down my spine. I understand your hatred and sadness completely. All of this wouldn't have happened if the heroes had done their job well, don't you think? Your loss has affected you a lot, and I understand. So, I offer you the opportunity to change society so that no one else suffers like you do today, the man said with unsettling calmness, stroking my hair with his right hand. Honestly, what he said didn't feel so bad, and the man conveyed something to me, but I still couldn't shake off several doubts in my head. My name is irrelevant right now. What matters is that I have a quirk called All for One, which allows me to steal, make other people's quirks mine, and also give them to others. It's the most powerful and useful quirk for you. His words only confused me more. But before I could ask, he grabbed both of my shoulders, presumably to emphasize the seriousness of the matter. But that's impossible, right? That such a quirk with the description he's giving me exists. Someone with such a quirk would be too powerful. It would be a tragedy if that power fell into the wrong hands. As if he could see through me, the man chuckled softly before standing up. I'm offering you this quirk to change society to your liking. To shape it as you wish, to make incompetent heroes disappear, and for your word to be law for everyone. Heroes won't stand in your way, and you'll be able to control them at your will. No one can stop you, and you'll make this society see that the real problem lies in the very nature of their beloved peace. The strongest make the changes while the weak are mere pawns beneath the strong. His words held a passion and conviction that unsettled me and even convinced me at times as I watched him raise a fist. Surely, my eyes are red from crying, but I could swear his speech evoked a brief admiration in a part of me I didn't know existed. If what this man says is true, I could exact revenge for my mother. I could ensure that no one ever loses a loved one again. I could help others as I've dreamed of since I was a child. He looked at me again and extended his hand. So, what's your answer, Izuku? Do you accept inheriting this power to change the society that turned its back on your mother? he asked with a gentleness that clashed with how threatening he looked with that mask on, but nevertheless managed to reach me. Hesitantly, I nodded. I accept your offer," I replied with a broken and hoarse tone as I reached out to take his hand. But it was seconds after shaking his hand that a sharp pain surged through my body. Arg! It felt as if every bone in my body was breaking, as if every molecule screamed in pain, as if they were stabbing my heart 100 times. The man didn't let go of my hand, even seeing all the suffering he caused me, as if he expected something from all this pain. Did this man want to kill me? Was it all a damn trick? Am I going to die without even making a change for the better in society? I won't be able to avenge my mom? No. That's not going to happen. Today, I won't die. I must live for my mother, who would want me to continue with my life. I won't let this man kill me. I won't die. Grush. In the blink of an eye, I moved my free hand to punch the man in the stomach, but everything happened differently from what I planned. My arm turned into a large metal blade that pierced through the suited man's stomach. He doubled over in pain, but he remained standing for several more seconds before releasing my hand and kneeling in front of me again. My arm/blade remained stuck in him, and at some point, the pain ceased. I looked completely terrified at the state of my arm, but I suddenly felt a hand on my head. I realized it was the man, who still seemed to have something to say despite being wounded. "The transfer of All for One has been successful, Izuku. You might get angry with me later, but it's too late to retract. And if you happen to see a boy named Tomura Shigaraki, please tell him I've gone far away and won't return." But he should still pursue his goals, the masked man said, coughing inside his helmet. The warm blood gushing from the deep wound stained my arm, which returned to its normal shape. After almost a minute of dry coughing, he fell silent, and his hand on my head weakened at the same time as I stopped hearing the raspy breath from his mask. I widened my eyes as I realized that I had killed that man. Before anything else, I was surprised to see the man's corpse turning into black dust that rose in the air before quickly entering my mouth without my being able to stop it. I could feel an unsettling sense of serenity invading me, and a scorching heat coursed through my body. Perhaps it was because of the transfer of All for One he mentioned, but I felt as if I now had the ability to control that quirk. I wouldn't know how to explain it, but it's as if it had been mine all along. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. The sensation of having so many quirks within me is indescribable. Just a brief glance inside me made me realize the number of dangerous quirks that man had, and yet he decided to give them to me. But that's... I froze as I realized that I had pierced the man's stomach with my arm turned into a metal blade. I remembered the words of the officer who came earlier: "A villain with metal powers attacked and caused a large sign to fall on a crowd of innocents. Your mother was one of them. It can't be a coincidence. A man with a metal quirk comes to my house on the same day a villain with a similar quirk murdered my mother." You didn't need to be a genius to understand. Piecing it all together, I understood that the man who gave me All for One is the same one who killed my mother. Damn! I roared and pounded the floor with force, causing the house to tremble in response to my anger. Why the hell did he do it? What the hell did he want to prove by killing my mother? Am I part of his experiment or what? I clenched my teeth tightly, pressing my forehead against the floor while my fists closed so hard my knuckles turned white. I don't understand. But it doesn't make sense. I won't regain anything by losing my composure. I don't know where this self-control came from, but taking deep breaths, I found myself kneeling with my arms hanging limply. Only my furrowed brow remained. Whatever it is, that man had a plan for me with his speech, and I definitely won't comply with it. I'm offering you this quirk to change society to your liking. To shape it as you wish, to make incompetent heroes disappear, and for your word to be law for everyone. Heroes won't stand in your way, and you'll be able to control them at your will. For a moment, I was seriously tempted by his words, but if I have this power, I'll use it for good, not evil. I won't fulfill the will of my mother's murderer. Maybe now that I'm alone, but still, I won't let anyone lose a loved one. I mustn't cry anymore. I'll have to be able to bear the sadness from now on. I must make my mother proud. I'll graduate from UA, and I'll be a hero. No one will mock me or prevent me from achieving it. I've decided. No innocent will die while I'm there. I'll become a terrifying presence to anyone who wants to cause harm and chaos. I lowered my gaze to my fists. Now I must deal with my mother's absence and continue going to school. I have to start preparing myself to enter UA, but still, I won't just stand by when someone is in danger. Licensed or not, I'll save whoever needs it. That's my goal, I must never forget it. Normal POV. After a minute of silence, Izuku stood up with a calm determination in his eyes. He wiped away the remaining tears from his face and walked over to where his phone lay broken into pieces. He sighed and reached out towards the damaged device. Almost magically, the pieces started to slowly reassemble as they floated and came together. Telekinesis or time control? It hardly mattered right now. After a minute of waiting, the phone looked as if it had never been broken. The phone floated back into his hand. He turned it on and found a picture of his mother in his gallery. She was smiling happily, holding him in her arms on the day he was born. His heart squeezed knowing she was no longer in this world, but he couldn't help but smile softly seeing her so joyful. "I love you, Mom. I hope you're watching me as I save people, preventing more victims from villains like you," the green-haired boy said to his late mother as he set the image as his wallpaper. He put his phone away and remained alone in the somber silence of the house, now filled with memories of the great woman who cared for and loved him all her life. He shook his head, trying not to be too affected by it. "I guess all that's left is to wait to be accepted into UA, but now I'll need to train hard if I want to achieve my goal," he said, looking at his right fist, pondering how many quirks he could manifest through it now that he is all for one. He wouldn't be the weak Mukasei everyone mocked anymore. He would earn respect, and even if everyone was against him, he would become the #1 hero. If this great quirk was given by a villain, then he would turn it into a heroic quirk used for good. "I'll start training tomorrow," he decided with a half smile, looking at a distant corner of the room where a set of weights lay that he would now use often. As much as he didn't want to, he would remember this day for the rest of his life. It wasn't just the day his mother died, it was also the day he gained the power to become a true hero, as he had dreamed of since childhood. He turned on his heels and headed towards the hallway, stopping in front of his mother's room. He stared at it for a while before reaching for the doorknob, stopping a few inches away but forcing himself to enter. He didn't like it, but he knew this room would never be used by her again. He calmly approached the bed, crouched down, and a box from the back moved towards him, which he proceeded to place on the sheets. He opened it and looked at the photo album his mother had. He took it in his hands with a sad grimace before sitting down and taking a few moments to gather courage. He has to face the fact that the person he loved most has died because of a senseless villain. He took a deep breath and began to look at the photos inside the album. The first was the photo he had on his phone the day he was born. She looked so happy. The following ones were of him as a baby, where she bathed him, took him for walks, fed him, cradled him in maternal embrace. At birthdays she organized with great effort, his first day at daycare, her tucking him into bed, etc. Tiny tears formed at the edge of his green eyes. He tried his best to endure the pressure in his chest and the vertigo that swept over his senses, but it was difficult to accept that he would never see her again, and there are thousands of people feeling the same for a loved one who was taken away from them. It was simply heartbreaking for his soul. He reached the photos of where she took care of him and Kachan when they met to play in the park, another where she dressed him in a full-body all-might pajamas because he had asked for it, another where she accompanied him on his first day of basic education. He remembers that day she accompanied him to the classroom, encouraged him with a song she always hummed, and then gave him his all-might doll to give him courage. Then there were more recent photos from 2 years ago, one where he cooked with her and made her laugh, another photo where they were together but it was badly taken by her who didn't know how to use her new phone. Izuku remembered and cherished all those moments with bittersweet nostalgia, knowing there would be no more mother and son moments to add to the album now that she was gone. Moments later, he turned to the last page of the album, where there was a photo of his mother with a gentle smile, making the peace sign with him in the background studying at the dining table. This confused the green-haired boy because he didn't know when she took that photo. After several seconds, he remembered that it was during a week of exams when he studied like crazy despite already having some of the best grades in his class. With a sad grimace, he picked up the photo and held it closer. It was the last photo of Inko Midoriya alive. If only he had known this morning that he wouldn't see her again, then she. He struggled to contain his frustration and prevented his hand from crumpling the photo of his dear mother. Without any particular reason, he turned it over, and his eyes widened at the message written in her handwriting. He swallowed hard and began to read what was written. "Me with my little hero who saved me from loneliness and gave me the great honor of being his mother. My little Izuku studies hard and strives to one day be a great hero who saves people despite all the difficulties in his way. That's the kind of son I have and I'm proud of. Thank you for being my son, Izuku." A drop fell onto the back of the photo, then another. Izuku was surprised to find tears escaping from his eyes and streaming down his freckled cheeks. He tried to hold it back, he really did, but the tears kept flowing endlessly without signs of stopping. The sobs began to echo in the room, and inevitably Izuku Midoriya found himself submerged in a bitter and silent cry for the wave of emotions that struck his fragile heart after reading his mother's words. "Study hard at school today too, okay, Izuku?" She encouraged him with a big smile as she bid him farewell at the doorstep, and he had to go to school. If only he had known he wouldn't see her anymore, he would have said something instead of just nodding. Ugh. He clutched the photo carefully in his hands as the tears continued to flow. He has to make her proud. He will be a great hero who will save everyone in need, just as she needed him in her last moments. He will be strong like she was for so many years after his father's death. He will live to fulfill his dream as she would have wanted him to because he had her support. And so he would, but today he is just a boy who lost his mother and wants to vent his feelings through his sad tears for his loss. But he would keep her with him both in his heart and in his memory so she would never completely disappear. She would stay alive within him and be the driving force that encourages him when he feels overwhelmed or confused. Even after the death of Inko Midoriya, his mother, she would continue to support him, and that is enough for him. The next day. The previous night was truly hell for young Midoriya, but what happened will not be revealed until later. At noon, the police officer returned as promised with a lawyer in charge of his mother's will and would also handle the legal documents and arrangements for the boy. All of the late Inko Midoriya's belongings would be given to Izuku along with her bank account to pay for his education, including university when the time comes. Then they discussed who would have custody of the green-haired boy, but a tired Izuku presented the fact that he had no living relatives and requested to live alone without an adoptive family or legal guardian. The lawyer, who initially resisted, couldn't say no to the strangely calm young man and agreed. He would begin preparing the boy's documentation once it was clarified that he would continue attending school, and thanks to his mother's money, he could support himself without needing to work for at least 4 years, so his basic needs were supposed to be covered. The officer and the lawyer left after discussing various matters such as Inko's funeral. There was still a lot of paperwork to be done with the lawyer, but Izuku was already assured of an empty house filled with memories where only he would be training and studying. He would go to school as usual without worrying about finding a job thanks to his mother's efforts, so he would have time to familiarize himself with All for One and all the quirks it contains to one day be the one who saves them all. All for One ended up in good hands that would use it for good. That power would be the downfall of countless criminals and villains who dare to do harm. From that day on, he wouldn't be the same Izuku Midoriya as before, but his goal hasn't changed much really. He would be the greatest hero of all. A year had passed since Izuku gained his power from All for One and his mother's death. With determination and conviction, the green-haired boy trained relentlessly, following a routine that might shock many: 100 squats, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, lifting 100 kilograms with each arm, and running 100 kilometers every single day. His body quickly responded to such rigorous training, reflecting significant physical changes. At the age of 15, Izuku was in his final year of high school. Despite his young age, he stood tall at 1.80 meters, boasting strong, well-defined muscles that were appealing without being excessive, drawing the attention of any girl who saw him. The insults from his classmates ceased due to the intimidating aura emitted by the now serious, strong, and strangely indifferent green-haired boy. Since gaining All for One, Izuku experienced recurring nightmares filled with grotesque, bloody, cruel, and inhuman scenes that could traumatize anyone. These scenes might be fragments of memories from the previous wielder, hinting that Izuku might eventually learn why he was chosen as the successor. Although he vaguely remembered mentioning someone named Shigaraki Tomura, to whom he could have passed his quirk, these nightmares caused Izuku discomfort as he witnessed the atrocities committed by the former wielder. The nightmares depicted torture, conversations, quirk acquisition, battles, and more from the previous All for One user, likely related to when Izuku absorbed the dust from the suited man's corpse. Nonetheless, these nightmares could prove useful, allowing Izuku to learn important conversations and gain insight into the villain society, how the previous wielder stole quirks, and especially his combat tactics. Izuku engaged in numerous battles against both heroes and villains alike, with the most challenging being fights against groups of 7 exceptionally strong individuals who always posed a challenge. However, Izuku always emerged victorious, causing them to flee, albeit with their plans thwarted. In the last battle Izuku witnessed, All for One fought against a woman from the group of 7 and a silhouette of a young hero who matched him in strength. The battle was fierce, with All for One managing to kill the woman he had fought numerous times before, but incredibly, the young hero's silhouette managed to defeat him, leaving him in critical condition. It was indeed the first defeat of All for One for the previous wielder. What intrigued Izuku the most was the identity of the hero silhouette who defeated the cursed villain responsible for his mother's death. Nevertheless, Izuku didn't dwell on it much, as it could interfere with his schedule of studying, researching, reading, and training. Strangely and miraculously, he maintained a perfect balance between all these activities, including the time for cooking, bathing, sleeping, and attending school. Meanwhile, Katsuki was truly irritated by the attention his former friend was receiving at school. He continued to insult and mock him in class, as he always did, but none of it seemed to affect Midoriya. He either ignored Bakugo completely or gave him intimidating glances, causing Bakugo to relent with annoyance. On more than one occasion, the blonde-haired boy wanted to confront the green-haired boy outside of school, but Izuku always avoided him calmly and indifferently or simply intimidated him with his gaze. Bakugo wondered about the reason behind the change in the once weak and cowardly green-haired boy who used to annoy him. In Izuku's classes. Another regular school day for the green-haired boy as he calmly reviewed his hero notes while the teacher preached about using quirks for good. Katsuki, on the other hand, sat with his legs up on the desk, showing he couldn't care less about the teacher's words. Well, young ones, graduation is almost here, so I hope you think carefully about which school you'll attend. Remember, you are the future of the Hero Society. The teacher exclaimed enthusiastically, extending his hands with his quirk. The other classmates cheered with excitement, each showcasing their quirks except for Katsuki. Some of their quirks were ridiculous, like stretching their neck or nose. They would mock someone like Mukasei for not being able to do it. What idiots! Don't lump me in with these extras. I'll be the #1 hero, surpassing All Might, Katsuki declared proudly, fists clenched, standing on his desk. The others groaned at being called extras. Calm down, Bakugo. I remember you plan to enter UA, right? The teacher said calmly, glancing at Katsuki. The blonde smirked defiantly and clenched his fists with determination. It's great that you're aiming for the best school in Japan, but you're not the only one, right? Midoriya also wants to get into UA, the teacher continued calmly, then turned to look at the green-haired boy, who remained quiet and serene as usual, reading. The teacher remembered trying to get Izuku's attention by hitting him before but always ended up with his hand restrained by the green-haired boy's strength. He recalled not to mess with him. The whole class fell silent, lacking the courage to mock the intimidating green-haired boy. Bakugo glared at Izuku upon hearing that his rival wanted to go to the same school as him. Deku, how dare you even think you can aim for the same school as me? Katsuki exclaimed angrily, causing small explosions from his palms. The green-haired boy ignored him and continued reading calmly. It's not like the blonde was worth his time to respond to. Although the troublemaker would probably do something. Don't you dare ignore me, nerd, Bakugo shouted, approaching the green-haired boy's seat to hit him. The green-haired boy calmly dodged the blow without getting up from his seat, then grabbed Katsuki's wrist and pinned it to his back, preventing the blonde from moving due to pain and the possibility of losing his arm. Everyone, including the teacher, was silent and astonished at the scene. In a matter of seconds, the green-haired boy subdued the explosive blonde with complete ease. Izuku sighed before releasing Katsuki, who rubbed his wrist, feeling sore. Hasn't it been clear by now that I'm no longer someone you should fear? Just give up trying to intimidate me and don't bother me. I have better things to do than waste time with someone who used to be my best friend, the green-haired boy said calmly, glancing sideways at the blonde. Katsuki seethed with rage at the embarrassment the green-haired boy caused him but for now wouldn't do anything as something inside him told him it was better to stay away from Izuku. On the streets on the way to Izuku's home. Now, Izuku was returning home as usual. It's worth mentioning that Izuku always had a bored or carefree expression now. Nothing disturbed him or made him lose his serenity. Currently, he was passing through a tunnel, thinking about ordering pizza after training. Unfortunate boy, said a slimy life form emerging from a sewer with joy and malice. Upon fully emerging, it was clear he was a villain with the quirk to transform into mud. He went after Izuku to take over his body but didn't expect that. Hiss. Izuku swiftly turned to look at the villain with truly intimidating and ominous eyes, his hand extended in the villain's direction. It seemed that in a fraction of a second, he trapped the villain in a transparent blue cube, as large as the villain himself. That was one of Izuku's quirks called Perfect Cube, which allowed him to create cubes of different sizes made of energy that were very resistant and useful for enclosing living beings. Its size could be controlled at will, but the farther it was from its creator, the less resistant it would be, and its duration could vary. What the hell? Exclaimed the mud villain in confusion and panic as he looked at the cube that confined him. He then realized that eventually, the cube's size would decrease, causing him to shrink until he was the size of a soccer ball. You didn't expect this unfortunate boy to do this to you, did you? Izuku said with a slight smile, looking unconcerned at the mud villain, who was trapped inside the cube without being able to move or resist, glaring angrily at the green-haired boy. Damn brat, let me out of here, demanded the villain, irritated and furious. Moments ago, he was escaping from a very dangerous hero, and when he tried to camouflage himself by using a passerby's body, he ended up like this. Do you really think I'm going to obey scum like you? Izuku said with a mocking smile as he picked up the cube with the villain inside. It seems someone else has arrived, the green-haired boy said calmly as he placed the cube on his back and noticed the number one hero, All Might, approaching while seemingly searching for something. The man was tall with tan skin, muscular and large, with blonde hair sporting two large hair antennas completely raised. He wore a white t-shirt and brown jeans, had a shopping bag in one hand, and wore a big, bright white smile on his face, his eyes barely visible due to his prominent eye sockets. Hello, young man, have you happened to see a mud villain around here? Asked the symbol of peace with a big smile on his face, stopping in front of Izuku to smile at him. Hello, All Might, indeed, I have seen one, the green-haired boy replied serenely, with a small serene smile on his face. As much as he admired the symbol of peace since he could remember, that fanaticism had calmed down, and he could remain calm without any problems when facing his favorite hero. Really? Where is he? Asked All Might intrigued, still smiling broadly. It should be noted that All Might always smiles, and the moment when he doesn't will be emphasized. Right here, Izuku replied calmly, showing the blue cube with the villain inside, surprising and astonishing the blonde and terrifying the villain, facing the hero he was fleeing from. But how? How did you manage to trap him all by yourself, young man? Asked the symbol of peace, very surprised and excited to see that the villain he was chasing was stopped by a high school student who looked about 17 due to his physique. It was nothing, the point is, he's not free, so I trapped him with my quirk, the green-haired boy replied simply and calmly, downplaying the matter with one hand. Thank you very much, young man. I'm sorry for involving you in my fights, said All Might, a little surprised but still very grateful to the young green-haired boy who prevented the villain from remaining free. Don't worry, All Might. By the way, the cube will disappear any moment if it's too far from me, so don't you have another container to take it? Izuku asked calmly, with a slight smile, as he watched the symbol of peace touch the cube he created with curiosity. I've got a bottle right here, exclaimed All Might happily, pulling out a large soda bottle from his pants. The green-haired boy nodded, indicating that it could work. Then the blonde drank the entire bottle as if it were a glass of water, leaving it completely empty. He then proceeded to put the villain inside the bottle. You've been a great help, young, said the blonde with intrigue after trapping the villain in the soda bottle. Izuku Midoriya, replied the green-haired boy simply and carefree. Well, thank you very much, young Midoriya. Would you like an autograph? The number one hero proposed as he pulled out an autograph pen from a pocket he always had handy. If it's not too much trouble, replied the green-haired boy calmly as he pulled out volume number 13 of his hero notes. It was interesting to jot down the quirks of other heroes and their characteristics, even though he never planned to steal them. Thank you again, young Midoriya, goodbye, said the hero happily as he walked out of the tunnel, waving his hand goodbye to Izuku. Wait, All Might, I have a question for you, said the green-haired boy as he walked towards the hero to stop him. There, Izuku noticed that All Might coughed up a bit of blood that fell onto the pavement, which worried him about the hero's condition. I'm sorry, young Midoriya, I don't have time to talk further, said All Might nervously, still smiling, as he quickly left the tunnel and then leapt into the sky with force, shooting upward as if he were flying. The number one hero had already relaxed as he soared through the sky, but when he looked to his left, he could see young Izuku lying next to him, looking up as he flew, completely carefree. But what the? Asked the symbol of peace, completely surprised to see the young man flying. All Might moved very abruptly and felt as if something had fallen, but he paid no attention due to the surprise the green-haired boy gave him. Wasn't his quirk supposed to create those cubes? Was the hero's thought. Excuse me if I'm bothering you too much, but my question is very important to me, so can we land there? Izuku said calmly, pointing slowly to the rooftop of a building. The symbol of peace, tiredly, had no choice but to agree and listen to the green-haired boy since if he kept flying, he wouldn't be able to escape easily. On the rooftop. The number one hero headed to the rooftop, and Izuku followed him flying carefree. Once both were on the rooftop, the blonde felt the need to ask Izuku something that evidently the green-haired boy had anticipated. How were you able to fly if you already have a quirk, young Midoriya? asked the hero intrigued, leaning against the rooftop railing as he looked at the green-haired boy. Well, it's a bit complicated to explain, but can I ask you my question first? Said Izuku calmly as he rubbed the back of his neck leisurely. The hero nodded with a gesture, then looked calmly at the boy. Have you been able to save everyone without anyone dying? Asked the green-haired boy with a serious and focused look at the hero, to which the blonde put on a serious expression while still maintaining his smile. I mean, have you been able to save every person if you set your mind to it? You're the number one hero in the world, and I suppose nothing is too difficult for you. You must have been able to save everyone who needed your help, Izuku said calmly with hope in his eyes as he looked at his favorite hero, who remained silent, pondering whether to tell the truth or just give him hope with a little lie. For example, if I hadn't been paying attention, that mud villain would have subdued me, but even so, you were nearby and could have helped me, the green-haired boy said, looking in another direction with a slight smile, thinking about that hypothetical scenario. It wasn't too hard to imagine that the best hero could save them all if he set his mind to it. That's impossible even for me, replied All Might seriously, causing the green-haired boy to look somewhat surprised. The green-haired boy didn't expect that response at all. No matter how strong I am, there will always be someone who needs my help and is beyond my reach to save. I'm not a god who is everywhere to help everyone. All I can do is save as many people as possible during a dangerous situation, replied the blonde seriously, with his gaze fixed on the young man, while his big smile diminished slightly. But don't you think there's a way to save them all? Asked the young green-haired boy again, a little surprised by the number one hero's response. The truth was understandable, but he still wasn't satisfied with that answer. If you happen to find that way, let me know. Replied All Might with a renewed smile and a thumbs up, which determined the green-haired boy to discover such a method, so he smiled calmly and serenely. You can count on it, All. The green-haired boy said with a calm smile and a serene and somewhat challenging look as he clenched his fist until he was suddenly interrupted. Sploosh. The number one hero had spat out a large amount of blood from his mouth, followed by a large amount of smoke coming from his skin, covering him for a few seconds. After that time, a gust of wind cleared the smoke to reveal a very thin blonde man with very long hair and two long locks cascading down the sides of his face. Izuku was about half the size of All Might, with his facial features gaunt, and his eye sockets so prominent that his eyeballs were not visible at all, only two bright blue points that could be his eyes. What the hell happened to All Might? Asked Izuku, a little excited and surprised as he looked confused and intrigued at the skeletal man in front of him. This is my true form, young Midoriya, I am All Sploosh. The man identifying himself as All Might responded before coughing up an insane amount of blood once again. This is incredible, can you please explain this? Asked the green-haired boy calmly as he sat on the ground, wanting to know why the muscular hero ended up in that emaciated state. Alright, young Midoriya, but you must never tell anyone about this, understand? All Might said tiredly as he sat back against the rooftop railing. Then the hero proceeded to explain the reason for his condition, showing the green-haired boy his wound and recounting how many years ago he fought against the strongest enemy of his hero career and how both ended up in a near-death state. He also told him about the numerous surgeries he underwent just to maintain his muscular form for at least 3 hours a day. So that's what happened, huh? Chuckled the green-haired boy with a somewhat carefree air, supposing who that strong enemy was that fought against All Might to leave him in that state. Although it was just a theory, he found it amusing how small the world could be. I don't see the humor, young Midoriya, said the blonde seriously as he stood up again. I just found something funny, but the truth is that your situation is very serious, the green-haired boy defended himself as he stood up with a serene look fixed on the deteriorated number one hero. I would appreciate it if you didn't say anything, said the blonde calmly as he offered a handshake to the green-haired boy as a sign of trust and faith that he would keep silent. It's okay, don't worry, it would be a real problem if this were to be known, the green-haired boy replied calmly as he responded to the hero's handshake. Then tell me about your quirk exactly, All Might requested with interest and curiosity as he looked expectantly at the young green-haired boy who still had to explain his quirk. Well, my quirk is boom, Izuku said casually before being interrupted by a loud explosion that startled both him and All Might. Where did that come from? Asked All Might, startled and worried about the origin of the explosion. When both looked in the direction of the sound, they saw a large amount of smoke rising from a central area as if there were a fire. It seems to be coming from the center, let's go. Izuku responded seriously as he crouched down a bit, indicating to the blonde to climb onto his back, to which the hero, feeling a little embarrassed for depending on a young man, agreed. In the center area. At the site of the explosion's origin, several heroes were evacuating civilians from the buildings and the debris caused by a villain. It was the mud villain that Izuku had captured, but All Might accidentally dropped him while in the air. The villain trapped in the bottle fell into an alley where, by pure chance, Bakugo was passing by with his friends. The grumpy blonde kicked the bottle without realizing the villain and accidentally freed him. Now, he had captured Katsuki and was trying to control him to make him produce several explosions, making the hero's job even more difficult. A large number of people watched the scene from a safe distance, worrying about Katsuki's well-being and safety. He was putting up a lot of resistance, creating several explosions in an attempt to free himself from the villain, failing miserably. Being taken as a hostage limited the heroes in defeating the villain. "Someone help that kid," shouted a civilian with concern. "We can't beat him, we need a hero with a favorable quirk to come," exclaimed another hero angrily and irritated, feeling useless for not being able to save the boy. "For now, let's just help the civilians," said another hero dressed as a firefighter as he extinguished the fire in one of the buildings with his quirk. "Ha ha ha, this brat has a good quirk," exclaimed the mud villain with euphoria and malice as he proudly observed all the destruction caused by Bakugo's destructive quirk. Bakugo was furious as he struggled against the grip of the mud villain. "Damn it!" he exclaimed, but his efforts were futile. The mud had him trapped, arms, legs, torso, and part of his face. "Look, it's Mount Lady," a hopeful girl pointed out as the giant heroine approached the scene. "I can't get through, I need at least 2 lanes to intervene," the blonde heroine regretted being unable to help in the narrow street. "Damn, if only All Might were here," murmured a hero in ninja attire with wooden parts, using his wooden limbs to lift debris and guide civilians to safety. Izuku and All Might, in their skeletal state, had arrived at the scene, trying to see what was happening amid the crowd and smoke. All Might leaned against a lamppost, witnessing the mud villain holding a blonde student captive, causing destruction. "When did I drop it?" All Might wondered, surprised, then realizing he dropped something when he saw Izuku flying. Feeling guilty, he pressed his hand to the wound near his heart, wishing to return to his muscular form to resolve the situation. "Someone, please help him!" a panicked elderly woman exclaimed. "Call All Might, he'll surely save him," a civilian shouted angrily, watching as no hero could assist the boy. "Stop that villain at once," another civilian urged, trying to encourage the heroes, but they couldn't do much as the villain used the blonde as a shield. This civilian and some cameramen recorded the scene in detail. "Pathetic, pathetic, pathetic," echoed the number 1 hero's thoughts, seeing neither the local heroes nor himself could help the captive blonde. He had reached his 3-hour limit for the day, unable to save Katsuki. "Who's the kid?" Izuku asked, concerned for the possible victim held by the mud villain, but he didn't finish the question when he saw it was Katsuki. "What a nuisance, it had to be Kachan. But still, I can't let him remain in danger," thought the green-haired boy seriously, a bit annoyed, as he began to make his way through the crowd, emitting an intimidating aura. The civilians felt the imposing presence of the tall green-haired boy and cleared a path for him. The heroes were about to stop him, knowing he wasn't permitted to intervene, but he looked at them seriously, halting them. It was as if with his gaze, he told them he was the only one who could do something. If they couldn't act, they shouldn't stop those who could help. For now, they should focus on protecting civilians and controlling the fire. Mount Lady, across the street, saw the green-haired boy approaching the mud villain with seriousness and calmness. She was about to shout for him to get to safety when she saw him glance at her with a confident, penetrating gaze, smiling slightly, which puzzled and slightly embarrassed the heroine. "Get ready, you damn villain," Izuku said with a cold, serious look, setting down his backpack and removing his school jacket, leaving him with just his white shirt, highlighting his toned torso. "You again? You won't trap me with this kid here," the mud villain exclaimed with pride and complete confidence, squeezing the blonde tighter, making it hard for him to breathe. "We'll see," the green-haired boy said with a piercing look and a defiant smile, then ran towards the villain. "Die!" the villain exclaimed angrily, sending several mud tentacles to attack the green-haired boy, but he calmly dodged them, either jumping over or sliding under them, maintaining his challenging expression throughout. "Too slow, sewer breath," Izuku said calmly, lightly touching the tentacles as he avoided them, instantly freezing them, which surprised the villain, the heroes, the civilians, and once again, All Might. Crack! Crunch! Swoosh! "What?" exclaimed the villain, deeply shocked as he watched his tentacles freeze, crack, and eventually break apart, separating from him. Wasn't the kid's quirk supposed to be cube-related? The villain wondered, creating more mud to reform his tentacles. Izuku easily reached the villain's chest where Katsuki was completely still. Katsuki was stunned to see the green-haired boy display a quirk to freeze the tentacles. Wasn't he supposed to be quirkless? How did that damn Deku deceive me all this time? Thought the blonde. Don't activate your quirk no matter what, or you'll pay dearly, the green-haired boy said seriously, looking at Bakugo with terror in his eyes. Bakugo couldn't respond due to the mud tentacles hindering him, only watching the green-haired boy in astonishment. You won't get him out, ha ha ha. The villain laughed victoriously, hoping the green-haired boy would try to rescue the blonde. It would be impossible for him to free Katsuki from the dense mud that held him captive using only muscle. Just shut up, the green-haired boy murmured seriously, then clapped his hands, creating a sharp air sphere around him and Katsuki. The air sphere cut through the mud holding Bakugo prisoner, setting him free. Then Izuku grabbed Bakugo by the shirt and threw him forcefully towards a hero to catch and keep him safe. He then stepped back a few meters, looking at the villain with a proud and satisfied smile. Here comes a new wave of questions and surprises for everyone witnessing the battle. The green-haired boy was displaying another quirk besides freezing. Katsuki and All Might were the most surprised. The number one hero had only known Izuku to have 4 quirks so far, which was completely astonishing but not impossible, given that he knew an enemy with the same peculiarity. Bakugo, on the other hand, was completely stunned and in shock. The green-haired boy who had always teased him as a child was showing 2 quirks. It felt like he was the victim of the worst joke of his life. He had always had an air of superiority for having a flashy quirk, but now he saw that the green-haired boy had 2 useful and potentially dangerous quirks. You little bastard! The mud villain exclaimed with rage, fury, hatred, and strength as he regenerated the area cut by Izuku's wind sphere. The green-haired boy, upon hearing the villain's insult, completely changed his expression. He now had a sadistic and malicious look, a disturbing and frightening smile, and positioned himself in a more intimidating and imposing manner, terrifying several people around him but especially the villain. How? I think you've crossed the line, bastard, Izuku said slowly and clearly, further frightening the villain. Then he started walking towards the large mud ball that insulted his mother, cracking his fingers. What are you going to do, huh? You're just a big bastard son of a bee. The villain stammered nervously, watching in panic and fear as the young man approached him, only to be interrupted by the green-haired boy. Just shut your mouth, Izuku exclaimed angrily, his eyes full of murderous intent. In a blink, he appeared in front of the villain, charging his right fist with force, then striking the villain right in the center of the face. Whoosh! Causing an immense amount of air pressure to shoot out in that direction, thus dissolving and dispersing the villain across the street. The blow released so much air pressure that it protected the civilians from being blown away. The pressure was so great that it caused the clouds in the sky to swirl, creating a sudden drizzle. Everyone was completely awestruck by the green-haired boy's power. It was astonishing how easily he dealt with the troublesome villain. All Might watched the scene in amazement because the green-haired boy's blow resembled his attacks like a Texas smash. Wow! He caused it to rain with just a punch, said a reporter who arrived at the scene, ordering the recording of the green-haired boy, who stood in the middle of the street, epic under the rain, calmly watching as the rain extinguished the fire. It was noteworthy that several girls in the area and Mount Lady were closely watching as the green-haired boy's body was visible through his completely soaked white shirt, causing several of them to blush. Did you see that? That kid seems to have multiple quirks, said a civilian excitedly, highlighting the fact that he displayed 3 quirks, ice, the air sphere, and finally, the super strength that created that immense air pressure. Everyone assumed it was super strength because All Might did the same. Hey, look, he's doing something, exclaimed another civilian, pointing at the green-haired boy. Everyone could see Izuku reaching out towards the villain's remains, drawing every part of the mud closer. Each piece rejoined, revealing the villain still in his muddy form but completely unconscious. Everyone was surprised again, seeing how he seemingly used a telekinesis quirk to attract the villain. You're definitely going to jail now, but not before, said the green-haired one calmly, observing the unconscious villain before bringing his right hand close to where the mud creature's forehead should be. Then, he made his hand feel warm as the mud started to fade away, revealing an obese, completely bald man lying unconscious on the ground, indicating he was the mud villain in his human form. What? The villain transformed back, exclaimed a hero in surprise and astonishment, as nobody had ever seen a quirk that could nullify others before. What nobody there knew was that Izuku didn't transform him back, he took away his quirk so he could never use it for evil again. That kid is amazing, exclaimed a reporter enthusiastically, triggering a wave of applause from the civilians present at the scene. Young Midoriya is amazing, thought All Might joyfully as he watched Izuku pick up his completely wet jacket and bag. The green-haired one sighed tiredly and annoyed, although luckily his bag was waterproof because his hero notebooks were inside. Several hours later, after the area was secured by the heroes, journalists went straight to Izuku to interview him and flood him with questions about why he has so many quirks. The green-haired one, uninterested, walked away from there, winking flirtatiously at Mount Lady before leaving, causing her to blush. The crowd of fans surrounding the green-haired one wouldn't let him leave, so he calmly began to float away from the scene, with the heroes allowing him to go for helping out this time. Reporters and cameramen took the opportunity to record the green-haired one to spread the news of the heroic green-haired savior. All Might, on the other hand, left the scene with intentions to talk to the green-haired one. Now, Izuku was walking peacefully towards his home, his wet jacket hanging from his shoulder, and some buttons of his white shirt undone for comfort. "Hey Deku," Bakugo exclaimed loudly from behind the green-haired one. The blonde had his hands in his pockets, grinding his teeth in fury. After all, the heroes treated him like a little kid who fell off a bike just because he was a villain hostage. "What do you want, Kachan?" Izuku responded annoyed, without turning to see the temperamental and explosive blonde, which irritated Katsuki even more. "How come you have multiple quirks? You've been lying to me all this time, damn it?" The blonde asked angrily, creating explosions in his hand from his pockets, trying to intimidate the green-haired one, which logically didn't work. "Does it matter to you? As if I have the duty to tell you everything," the green-haired one said calmly, glancing indifferently at Bakugo, who gritted his teeth in fury. "If I have one or two quirks, it's none of your business. I'm not the same person you used to intimidate, so adapt to this reality," he said seriously, with an intense gaze, turning completely to look into the eyes of his once best friend. "I'm not the same," Izuku continued seriously, with a gaze full of conviction and determination to make it clear that he's someone capable of expressing himself, capable of taking care of himself and others. "I'm better," concluded the green-haired one with an intense and captivating gaze, as a gentle breeze passed, moving his green locks while some pink petals fell from the sakura trees. Bakugo, despite struggling to accept this idea, felt disconcerted seeing the epic moment his rival and former best friend had just had. "I want you to know that I didn't ask for your help, got it, bastard?" Bakugo exclaimed with a bit of anger, having almost no words to contradict the green-haired one who had certainly disconcerted him with his words and his attitude full of conviction. "I hope you get into UA so I can crush you in front of everyone," exclaimed the ash blonde, his sadistic grin characteristic of Bakugo as he tried to regain confidence in himself. "Sure, of course. I only saved you because I wanted to, so don't worry. Besides, I will enter UA, but try to refrain from bothering me there," responded the green-haired one simply and disinterestedly, waving off the matter with his hands. Then, Katsuki put his hands in his pockets and headed home, but not before saying to Izuku. "You might be a good challenge now," Katsuki said under his breath as he looked at the ground, recalling the time when Izuku protected a child from him and his friends, who were abusing the child with their quirks. At that moment, Izuku couldn't stop him because he didn't have a quirk, but perhaps now he would fulfill his involuntary role as a rival more effectively. The green-haired one didn't pay much attention and was about to continue his way when he noticed Kachan had disappeared from his sight. Suddenly, he heard heavy footsteps running in his direction. "Wait, I'm here, young Midoriya," exclaimed All Might in his muscular form, with a big smile, arriving swiftly in front of the green-haired one. "All Might? What are you doing here?" asked Izuku with a hint of intrigue, not expecting to see the symbol of peace again honestly. "I cough." All Might began to speak but then coughed up blood again and reverted to his skeletal form, which no longer surprised the green-haired one once he got used to the idea that it would happen often. "I have something important to tell you, young Midoriya," said the emaciated hero calmly as he wiped away a trickle of blood descending to his chin. "I realize that you have what it takes to be a great hero. While the other pro-heroes couldn't do anything, you went to save the kid without hesitation," said All Might with a slight smile as his skeletal face allowed. "I don't think you should praise me so much. I just acted on instinct, and it just so happened that I could defeat the villain. Any powerful hero could have done that," Izuku responded serenely and with a slightly joyful smile at being praised by the number one hero. "You're mistaken there, young one. There are several stories of great professional heroes who say their bodies acted on their own the first time, and I include myself among them," All Might replied with enthusiasm and excitement as he pointed to himself with his thumb. "I'm flattered by what you're saying, All Might, but what are you getting at?" asked the green-haired one calmly and a little curiously as he looked into the hero's eyes. Although he didn't see himself as anything special, he would unquestionably do that for anyone in danger, even if he didn't particularly like them. When he sees someone in danger, he just acts, believing that people with their eyes ask for help. What I mean is that I see in you someone who will undoubtedly save people selflessly and heroically. Therefore, I ask you today if you want to be the successor to my power? Proposed All Might inspiringly and excitedly as he looked at the green-haired one, a breeze blowing through the hero's blonde hair from behind, adding a sentimental touch to the scene. Successor to your power? Asked Izuku with curiosity and intrigue at the words spoken by his favorite hero. If someone had told him this a year ago, he would undoubtedly have cried upon hearing that someone besides his mother believed in him. However, he had matured a lot mentally since then, but that didn't mean he wasn't moved by what his idol was saying. Yes, the quirk that I have isn't originally mine. It's called One for All and can be passed down to a successor, accumulating strength with each generation. I realize that you are worthy to inherit it, so I offer you the chance to acquire this power, explained the number one hero in an epic and inspiring manner, clenching his fist as bursts of light emanated, symbolizing the accumulation of power in each generation of One for All bearers. As Izuku listened to the explanation of One for All, he recalled several things. First, what was happening closely resembled how he obtained his power a year ago. The man in the suit, whom he named All for One, took notice of him and offered him his quirk, and now his favorite hero was interested in him and offering him the chance to be the next bearer of One for All. It would be an insult to accept All for One from the man who killed his mother and not receive One for All from the hero who symbolizes peace and heroism in society. I gladly accept, All Might. What do I have to do to obtain One for All? Said the green-haired one excitedly, smiling at All Might with emotion and a mature gaze, which pleased and relieved the symbol of peace who had been searching for someone with the virtues of the boy to be his successor for a long time. You have to eat my hair, said the blonde, transforming into his muscular form and plucking a single hair from one of his antennae. What? Asked Izuku dryly and completely confused, his expression shifting to a WTF? As a tumbleweed rolled down the street, creating a deathly silence, reminiscent of Western movies. You heard right. You have to digest my DNA to inherit my quirk, and I'm only giving it to you because I allow it. So, no matter how someone obtains your DNA, if you don't want it, nobody can take One for All from you, explained All Might with a big smile, showing a simple circle above them that illustrated All Might's explanation with chibi figures of himself, Izuku, and a villain trying to steal One for All. I see, but is there any painful repercussion or anything? Asked Izuku cautiously, remembering the amount of pain he felt when All for One gave him his quirk and the constant nightmares that plagued him for weeks. There would be if your body wasn't prepared to use it, but because you have a physical build like mine when I was your age, you won't have any problem, responded the number one hero with a big smile, giving the green-haired one a thumbs up signifying that there wouldn't be any issue. Alright. Here goes, said Izuku a bit unsure, before eating the blonde hair given to him by All Might. It goes without saying how repulsive it is to eat someone else's hair, and it wasn't his, but let's just say that All Might's silky hair tasted like lemon, alleviating the green-haired one's disgust a little. And that's it? Asked Izuku intrigued after having eaten the symbol of peace's hair. It wasn't a great achievement, nor would he proudly announce it in public, but what mattered was what would come after doing so. That's it, replied the hero simply and plainly. I don't feel any different or anything, said the green-haired one, trying to sense or perceive something different about himself. Would All Might turn to dust so he could feel the difference? Izuku shuddered at the thought of that possible scenario, where the greatest hero would die because of him. Don't be impatient, young Midoriya. You have to wait until your digestive system assimilates it, ha. Explained the blonde with strong pats on Izuku's back, trying to lighten the mood before laughing a bit loudly. That's odd, that didn't happen with the other person, murmured Izuku thoughtfully, with a hand on his chin, looking at the ground. What other person? Asked All Might upon hearing the green-haired one. He was curious about who the other person might be and how it related to what was happening. Oh, right. I forgot to tell you about my quirk, said Izuku, remembering that detail as he fist-bumped his other hand to indicate he remembered. This comment also reminded All Might that the green-haired boy couldn't explain due to the explosion on the rooftop. See, the enemy who gave you that wound is All for One, right? Izuku said with a slight smile and a calm look as he glanced at the tall, blonde hero who was startled to hear that name. What? How do you know? Asked the heavily built hero, completely taken aback and surprised to hear the name that brought him so much misery. That's because a year ago, on the day my mother died at his hands, he entered my house and gave me the quirk All for One. So now I can make mine, combine, and give quirks at will, replied the green-haired boy with a slight smile, his gaze showing a hint of sadness as he remembered that day, something not missed by the hero who felt sorry for the loss of the boy's mother. This is incredible, I never expected that villain could pass on his quirk. Wait a moment, young Midoriya, exclaimed All Might, surprised, then after a moment of thought, he called out to Izuku, his expression serious and his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a furrowed brow and seriousness as he leaned closer to the green-haired boy, not to intimidate but out of pure instinct and curiosity. What happened to him? Asked the symbol of peace, his tone serious as he waited for Izuku's response, not for intimidation but out of pure curiosity. I killed him, replied Izuku calmly and tranquilly, unfazed by All Might's proximity. What? Exclaimed All Might, taken aback by Izuku's shocking response. See, he gave me all for one by touching our hands. The process hurt more than you can imagine, so I panicked because I thought I would die and accidentally stabbed him with my arm in this form, explained Izuku calmly, transforming his right arm into a metallic blade that could easily cut through a lamppost or a steel beam. The number one hero couldn't believe what he was hearing. The man known as All for One, who killed his predecessor and inflicted that injury limiting him, was dead, and he died at the hands of the young man to whom he chose to pass on his power. So, he's dead? Asked All Might intrigued, wanting to confirm again what the young man had said. Very dead, his body turned to dust and everything, replied Izuku again, looking calmly at All Might and admitting the fact that the smoke was consumed by him and that he later suffered several nightmares that seemed to be fragments of the man's life. He omitted this because it would worry the symbol of peace. All Might smiled again but with more joy, mentally celebrating the death of the bastard who had him in that skeletal state. This is unprecedented, the strongest enemy no longer exists. And not only that, said All Might joyfully, turning his back to Izuku and then pausing briefly, leaving the green-haired boy expectant. Now you have all for one and one for all, meaning you have both opposite quirks, he exclaimed with excitement and a dazzling smile, imagining confetti, streamers, some explosions, and jets streaking across the sky behind him, leaving trails of blue, white, and red smoke in the American style. I find it amazing too. Believe me, with these two powers, I will be able to save everyone by surpassing my own limits. If someone is out of my reach, then I will extend that reach even further so that no one dies, said the green-haired boy seriously, a slight smile on his face as he looked at his two hands, then clenched them into fists full of determination, indicating that one is all for one and the other is one for all, and that both quirks bestowed upon him will be used for good. I believe with every fiber of my being in that, young Midoriya. From now on, you will train with me to master one for all and prepare to join Yue, so I hope you give your best effort, said All Might inspiringly and excitedly, placing a hand on Izuku's back to encourage him. Sure, I'll give A+ Ultra at all times, said the green-haired boy with a slight smile and a calm look, anticipating All Might's reaction to the phrase + Ultra. Ha ha, that's the spirit. Exclaimed the symbol of peace as he slapped the green-haired boy on the back, which stung a bit because he wasn't controlling his strength while in his muscular form. I think I should go, All Might, said the green-haired boy, checking the time and realizing it was getting dark. Who are you living with? Asked All Might intrigued, as the green-haired boy had told him his mother died a year ago because of All for One, so he was curious. My dad passed away many years ago, and my mom also died a year ago, as I told you before. So, I train at home and live alone, replied Izuku calmly, with a slight smile hiding the sorrow he felt in saying that. I'm sorry to hear that, said the symbol of peace, with sorrow, before returning to his emaciated form and spitting out more blood. The energy expenditure he had made throughout the day was excessive. He transformed to confront the mud monster and transformed back on the rooftop. Then he turned into his muscular form to reach the young green-haired boy and then returned to his emaciated form. Later, with the hair issue, he turned back into his muscular form and smiled. Just now, he returned to his emaciated form again. The strange thing was that he had already exceeded his limit of 3 hours daily and had been in his muscular form for several minutes while talking to the green-haired boy. While he remembered that during the mud villain attack, he couldn't transform, perhaps the psychological factor was influencing when he transformed? It could be, but the truth didn't matter as long as everything turned out well. Don't worry about that, All Might. I've made it my mission to live my life for my mother to prevent others from losing someone important, replied the green-haired boy with a kind smile, then walked towards his destination with his wet vest hanging off one shoulder and his waterproof backpack slung over the other. I expect great things from you, young Midoriya, thought the number one hero and symbol of peace as he watched the green-haired boy walk away with a big smile. Undoubtedly, with those two quirks and his good intentions, spirit, and determination, He would prove to everyone that he is a great hero who will surely surpass him someday. At Bakugo's house. After talking with All Might, Izuku headed to Bakugo's house, but not exactly to talk to Katsuki. He approached the door and rang the bell, then waited a few seconds for someone to answer. "Hi Izuku, how are you?" said a feminine voice with a friendly smile and a cheerful look as she opened the door wide. She was Mitsuki Bakugo, Katsuki's single mother, with short, uneven, and messy ash blonde hair. Her eyes were slanted but still large, wearing a simple blouse that highlighted her sculpted body, and over it, she wore a sweater. She also wore a tight skirt that accentuated her figure and simple dark sneakers. She was 170 centimeters tall and 37 years old, yet she looked very youthful, and her vibrant energy only added to that. "Great, Mitsuki. Did you hear about Kachan today?" replied the green-haired boy with a mischievous smile and a serene look as he engaged in conversation with Mitsuki. "Yes, I saw it on TV where they also showed you. Thank you for saving him, Izuku," said Mitsuki with a warm smile and a focused look on the green-haired boy. "But you know, I think today I want some compensation for all the effort," said Izuku with a playful tone as he gestured casually. He was also grateful for Katsuki's safety, considering his father's passing from an illness 13 years ago. He couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy for Mitsuki, who raised Katsuki alone. No one had seen it and wouldn't see it, but a dark-haired figure with red streaks gave Izuku a silent nod of approval, acknowledging his intention to support Mitsuki in any way he could.